Yo, yo, it is about that time for the Outside the Box podcast. We are back. We are happy to be here. We're happy to see, smell, look, and feel your faces. We're just in a good mood today, especially me. As you know, this is the show about sneakers and everything that surrounds sneakers, from music to culture to sports. We're just here to talk about things that we love. That's what the show is about. Not just sneakers, just things that we love. Of course, I'm not the only person on this show. So when I say we, I really mean the two more important people that are on this show. If this show was a rich family, I am the spoiled teenager that gets everything that I want. But Nick and Tiffany, they're the ones that really bring home the bacon. They make the money. They make things happen around here. They own the mansion. I'm just here as the kid that's ungrateful. So Nick, tell them where they can find you, and Tiffany, you tell them the same.
I don't know about that. I feel like in that analogy, I'd probably be like, you know, the worst of the two, like, pet dogs, like, you know, not the one that gets spoiled, but the one that has to stay outside. My name's Nick Engvall. I've been working in the sneaker business for about 10 to 12 years, and have a site called Sneaker History. You can find me there, or at Nick Engvall on all platforms, NickEngvall. But really, I'm just here to learn from the most important person on the show, which is Tiffany Beers. Tiffany, introduce yourself.
I'm Tiffany Beers. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube. And let's see, if I go to the analogy, I'm the outgoing aunt that taught Jacques how to be a rebel.
I love it. So welcome to the show, everyone. We are glad to have you. We got a really great show planned for you guys today. And some of the topics are pretty hot topics. There's some things that are, I think, going to push some buttons and get a lot of comments from you guys. But first of those is a transition. It's a change. It's a different way of thinking about things, especially when it comes to sneakers, as the people at Forbes have said that recording artists have officially surpassed athletes' influence on the sneaker reselling market. Now, that's a very specific title, and I questioned it at first when I first saw the headline, but then as I really thought about that headline, it really tells a bigger story, that it's just the resale market. It's not just sneakers in general, it's resale, and that's a totally different audience, and I don't know if that's an indicator of what's to come, or if this is just a blip on the radar. So, Nick, what are you thinking about this?
So, the reason why this one was so interesting to me is because I actually wrote a piece for Complex about 5 years ago, basically saying that, you know, it doesn't really matter. Athletic ability doesn't really matter in selling shoes at this point. And I say that then because I believe in, like, this, like, kind of multiplier effect that a lot of these celebrities have, where, you know, let's take Kanye for instance, because that's the, you know, kind of the number one you know, artist on the secondary market, right, as far as sneakers go. And there's Kanye, who has whatever millions of followers, has this crazy audience. We talked about him on a previous show, getting, you know, 50,000 plus likes every tweet. And then there's, like, his friends who are, you know, and family, like the Kardashians, who are, like, millions upon millions more. But it's not just like Kanye and Kim. It's like Kim and the mom and the sisters and the other sister and the brother, and, like, everybody supporting this one initiative. And that's kind of how their dynamic has worked to keep them relevant for so long. And I think that piece is very interesting because of the way contracts are set up for, like, signature footwear. You can't really have that same dynamic until you get outside of sports, right? So you can have LeBron, and you can have everybody that's a fan of LeBron, you know, resharing and talking about the new shoe and all of those things. But then you look at, like a Russell Westbrook, who's, you know, arguably, like, the second most popular player in the NBA, or, you know, Joel Embiid or any of the guys in the NBA, they're not going to share LeBron's stuff because they're tied to other brands. So it kind of like almost like funnels the energy away from the player in ways that are just really interesting that you don't really think about as far as artists getting away with doing that, because even like I think like recently Kanye posted pictures of shoes from other manufacturers in his closet or wardrobe or whatever, and clearly like him and Virgil are friends. They're going to support each other. They might not publicly be posting, like he's not going to publicly post that he's wearing Virgil's Prestos, but clearly he has a pair. So I think those kind of things have kind of overtaken what sports is, and I say that with like a really like solemn heart, right? Like I come from Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson, like David Robinson, Chris Webber, all these athletes that made the shoes relevant to me, right? Like I loved shoes, but I really loved the shoes that my favorite players, did something cool on court with, or ended up on a basketball card, or ended up on a magazine cover, because that's what I was really into. And I think it's just a different time. It's very interesting, and I think that like it's hard to argue with it. Your point about it being the secondary market also says a lot about the time that we're in, where the secondary market it always has been like a very unspoken important thing about sneaker culture and the business of sneakers, right? If you look at like say 2010, 2011, 2012 Jordans, that was absolutely like you could buy any pair of Jordans at retail and you could resell it. Like the secondary market was like kind of booming at that moment for Jordans.
Yeah.
And you look back, and that's also like the best years of Jordan retros specifically, at least. Not to, can't say that about necessarily like a performance product, but absolutely with retros, like there was like just this huge like booming business where they're opening stores in New York, and they have reasons to really be going hard with just specifically retros and new colorways and stuff. So I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about that, Tiffany, from someone who worked within the brand? Do you acknowledge that within the brand? Is that something that is thought about or talked about?
I don't necessarily know. My experience was more in the innovation end. It wasn't exactly right up in the category working with, the performance basketball shoe that came out every single year. I worked on a couple of them, like when Tinker wanted to work on one, like the AJ29. So I think it's more of a reaction. The sneaker industry is more mature now. It is much bigger than it was 10 years ago. I mean, it's way more dynamic. It's no longer a subculture necessarily. And so I think this is just part of it. The entertainers having popular shoes, it should have always kind of been there. But, Michael Jordan was dominating, right? Like he was just such an athlete and such a cultural icon that he just dominated. So like, it's weird for me because I think if Steph Curry had a good shoe design, they refer to him saying that Kanye has 70% more sales than the MVP of the NBA, which is Steph Curry. But Steph Curry's shoes in the last couple of years haven't really been that great, Right. And LeBron is such a big, dominant player. He needs a lot of support. It's not like you can just throw a lifestyle shoe on those guys and it's going to rock like the Jordans, So I think back to the Kobe's. Like, Kobe was a really good, post-Jordan, he was a really good entertainment/basketball kind of mix guy. I'd like to know your thoughts on that, Nick.
No, I absolutely think Kobe is... I don't know that he necessarily appealed to the same kind of, secondary genre. Like, he wasn't necessarily like the hip hop guy. Like Jordans became synonymous with hip hop, and Kobe almost had like this like his shoes were so, just so minimal for such a long time. With the exception of like I can't remember which one was like the really high version. Was that the 9 or the 10 that had like the high version?
The 9 was the really high one.
Yeah, and you look at all of his shoes other than that one, and they look like something that could easily be turned into a casual shoe, right? They obviously have performance, but they're designed after soccer boots, so they're way more, slim fitting, aerodynamic. They don't have that, and he, as a player, obviously, like you said about LeBron being like this big, massive player, Kobe played in a different way and didn't have that same kind of, like substance in as far as size and build. So I think that that kind of helps, and in like, I think of like a LeBron 15, right? It's an amazing shoe, but it's really big. So if you take the sneakerheads out of the picture and the basketball players out of the picture, who's actually looking to wear a shoe like that? Whoever you're thinking of is probably going to wear a bigger retro model shoe than a new performance model shoe. And with Kobe, you didn't really have to do that because his shoes, you could take. I mean, I think he even had multiple takedowns of his shoes because they sold so well to the general public. And I think, that's one thing that I think is challenging for the future generations of athletes across all sports to, maintain that kind of, I don't know, just like that kind of like that overall picture, like thought process of like, okay, who's the, outside of the 20% that's the basketball and the sneakerheads, who's going to buy this shoe when they walk into a mall, on a Sunday afternoon? Like, is it going to be somebody that is not necessarily playing or collecting? Because in the end, that's what makes these shoes more impactful over time, in my opinion.
Yeah, and hearing you say general public, the general public isn't buying shoes on the resale market.
Right.
That's a very specific audience. So like, I think you kind of have to take that into account as well when you look at this story. So you see it says Kanye West sells 70% more sneakers than NBA MVP Steph Curry, but I would argue that Steph Curry probably sells more shoes overall than Kanye West in general. So like there's a huge, it's two different markets. It's talking to two different markets, or we're talking to two different markets. And so when people hear this story, definitely keep in mind that the recording artists surpass athletes' influence on the sneaker reselling market, not just the sneaker market in general. And that's a big distinction, and I think people should definitely make sure they take note of that before they go tell their friends at the water cooler, because that's what you do after you listen to the Outside the Box podcast. You feel like you've gained some knowledge, some insight from Tiffany. But keep it with the artist.
No, I was taking a drink out of the water cooler and I choked up.
See, because it's the truth. Also, I don't know if you caught it, Nick, but there was a little humble brag from Tiffany in there.
Yeah.
You caught it? Yeah, when she was like,
what?
She was like, I didn't really work on design or with like those guys, like with the artists or the athletes. I was in innovation. So that's a little more important than what they were doing.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah, I don't get that. Yeah,
no,
I got it.
Not
I heard it.
more
we heard
important.
It. No,
different.
We heard it, Tiffany. We heard it, Tiffany. We heard it. We heard it in your voice. It was. She was almost aghast. Like, what? Do you think I do that?
Man,
no,
this is going south.
I was in innovation.
Is this a transition?
All right.
Is this a transition?
This is the awkward transition to the next story, and that next story is about Kanye. Speaking of artists, so Kanye wore what people are calling hospital slippers to a wedding, and I saw another article about this, and some people called them Yeezy slides.
They do look like
that's
Yeezy
a way
slides.
to look at it.
Yeah.
That is a way to look at it as well. But I guess my question, especially coming from somebody like me who's uninitiated when it comes to fashion, is this a cool thing now?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
no.
I love that the world is so micro-focused on Kanye, but I think he just forgot his shoes or something, Like, that's like you are in your house slippers and you roll out and you accidentally forget them on. I think that's what happened.
So here's the thing. Now, if these were Gucci or if these were Versace or another luxury brand, because I only really know those two, would people still have the same sort of reaction?
See, I don't think so, and I think that's there is a good possibility that Tiffany's theory is absolutely right, though. Like, everybody forgets their shoes sometimes. Come on, but like, I think that like he's actually wearing Yeezy slides, like probably an upcoming version or whatever, so that he can align with because he's wearing like a Louis Vuitton suit, which clearly, like, if you're getting even for Kanye, that's really dressed up. So I would assume that like he's just trying to align his brand with those high fashion brands. But I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. I feel like it's almost disrespectful to show up in slides for a wedding.
I mean, I don't think the slides are a problem. Like, wear whatever you feel is comfortable. Who knows? Maybe he had a blister, or hey, maybe he had something going on with his feet and he just needed something comfortable. But the big question is, why aren't they the right size?
Yeah. Yes.
Like, what?
That's the issue.
Were they Kim's? I mean,
right.
What's happening? Why aren't they right size?
That's the bigger issue for me. Like, if you want to wear slides, if that's your fashion slant or your fashion angle, you do you, boo-boo.
Yeah.
But when your heel is hanging off the back and your big toe is hanging off the front, that's something entirely different. You style the way you want to style, but you need to wear the right size.
True. And looking at the picture too, like, you can see behind him is somebody wearing a pair of Jordan 3s black cements. So clearly, like, the wear what you want to wear is good to go across everybody.
Yeah. I think we're pointing out Kanye because it's Kanye. And then I don't think they're the right color either to go with the suit that he had on, but that's another story entirely. Yeah. But they're definitely too small. And for all those out there that thought Yeezy slides were fake, here's your proof that Yeezy slides are real. And my worry is that this will become a staple at wedding for those out there that are fans of Kanye. So be careful who you invite to your wedding if they are a Kanye fan, because they may show up in house slippers or Yeezy slippers or Yeezy slides or hospital shoes or whatever it is you want to call these things. I'm just putting it out there. There is a possibility that they'll show up, and then this is a message for you. Don't be angry, because you should have saw this coming, because you listened to the Outside the Box podcast and we warned you. I mean, and we're gonna go ahead.
They only show him, really, right? Like, and you see those Jordan 3s. Who knows? Like, maybe he was inside the home or something and they made him take his shoes off, and this was the option and he forgot, like, it's hard to say what the story is, but
yep.
Yeah.
I think the moral of the story is exactly what you said, though, Tiffany. Like, why are we so hyper focused on Kanye and his shoes when, like, clearly it's not that big of a deal no matter what the situation was.
Yeah. That's true. That's true, except for the fact that they were way too small. But again, that's the only thing I'm really concerned about, is like why his shoes were so small. Shout out to Kim for loaning Kanye her slippers, loaning Kanye her slides. But with that being said, let's keep it moving and to a story that okay. So I'm really excited about this next story because we've been talking about it a lot here on this show, and I know it's not the most exciting topic, but you should listen like it is. It's sustainability, and it's the environment, and it's how we create things that can either benefit or take away from our world. And I feel like Reebok is taking a big leap in that direction, because they made shoes out of cotton and corn, and their tagline is made from things that grow. Now, I did a little research on this, and the corn is the outsole and the cotton is the upper, but the corn is not actually corn. It's a product called Sustera palindrome. No, that's not the right word. Sustera, something like that. Hold on, I got to look it up. I have it this Sustera propandiol. I'm guessing Sustera propandiol, and it's not corn you can eat. Basically, it's almost like feed corn that they ground up and turn into, I imagine, some sort of oil to make the outsole. I'm stumbling through this just because I just want to show you how awesome Tiffany's going to be when she really steps in here and saves me. So it's all rubber plastic is oil based, and I imagine they're making oil from the corn that makes the outsole for this shoe. So Tiffany, now that I've totally destroyed the meaning and everything behind this shoe, can you swoop in here and set everyone on the podcast straight?
So I don't know all the details, and I was actually having trouble finding information on it. Corn, like, you remember the gum sole shoe that was literally made out of gum?
Yep.
We
Yes.
talked about that a few weeks ago. So I'm guessing it's in the similar arena. Just using corn oil to make the rubber, I don't know if you can do, like, I don't know if they can say it's only made out of corn. Like, that's the question I have here. Is the upper, they say the upper is made out of cotton. Is it 100% cotton and the sole's made out of corn? What percentage is made out of corn? Or is just some corn in there?
So the percentage for the outsole is around 75%.
Corn.
Yeah. Or that I shouldn't say corn specifically. They say it's 75% bio-based.
Okay. Well, bio-based though. Oil's bio-based. So.
Yeah, the other like section of it says that it was described that the Sustera propandiol or whatever it is was described as a pure petroleum-free, non-toxic, 100% USDA certified bio-based product derived from field corn. So petroleum-free makes me think that there's no oil, right? At least in that 75%, but there could be in the other 25%.
Yeah, petroleum-free. Petroleum is basically the oil. Petroleum is what plastic is made out of. So yeah, it makes me think they're actually using, the fiber and the actual corn material in the outsole, which would be pretty cool. There's people in Portland that use fermented fruit juice and they turn it into race fuel. So, that's...
Oh, wow.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know. I want to learn more. If anyone knows anything about that, put it in the comments so I can figure it out. But yeah, I heard that this weekend at the racetrack that, corn-based fuel and race fuels from fruit are an actual real thing. So anyways, I distract us. So I don't know exactly how much of that is corn. I'm guessing, if you think of paper, right? Paper comes from shredded wood. If you think of corn in the same kind of process, I could see how it becomes part of the rubber. Or part of the outsole, but it probably isn't called rubber anymore. It's probably just called outsole, and there's probably not I would imagine at this point there's no rubber actually in that outsole.
Yeah.
And it does feel pretty close to rubber. It feels kind of more like a gum outsole, kind of that sort of. It's not super hard. It's not really soft. It's almost translucent. It's like a what's the word? A milky sort of color.
Okay.
Because I understand they didn't use any dye on these, and you can see like light through it.
Okay.
Interesting.
But it's really interesting. I also read that this shoe is not biodegradable though.
Oh.
They are working on another version that will be biodegradable, but this one is not. So I feel like that tells me something that I should know.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that means they bound the corn to something, another chemical that it can't be separated from, and it won't degrade, into the earth. I think the big question, Jacques, is what does it taste like when you put butter on?
From what I understand, these are not edible. But they are. But the new version that they are working on, they said they have a pair that's coming out in 2019, 2020, that is biodegradable and will decompose. If it's buried in the ground, it'll decompose in 5 years. So that
5 years
feels like that's important I just know when I read that this wasn't biodegradable, I was like, oh, I know that must mean something, and I can't wait to talk to Tiffany about it because she'll be like, yep, that means bloop-de bloop and blah-blah-de blah.
Exactly. I think the great part too is non-toxic, right? When they say they're using non-toxic materials, that's huge for everything and everyone. This no doubt is such a great step. Between Reebok and Adidas, these guys are leading the way in this. This is good stuff that I hope a lot of people support and continue to push forward. I know I tried to get a pair of these and they were sold out of my size, so I think they sold out pretty well.
Yeah, they sold out pretty well, and I was lucky enough to snag a pair. But and Tiffany, you and I talked about this a little bit. Like they were only $95. Generally, when you see brands take these sort of steps, they generally price stuff like this at a premium. And I'm excited that Reebok didn't price these at a premium.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Usually it costs more to process things and make them in this manner. This just means that the cost of the technology is reducing, or they found an amazing proprietary process to keep costs down. Either way, I mean, this is a great sign for everybody. And this is the third one, right? Because Timberland also has that shoe from recycled bottles. So, I mean, what's Nike's version? Where are the rest of the brands? And what's their initiatives? Are they going after it? Like, I'd love to know that.
Yeah, the interesting thing is the guy named Bill McInnes, he's the head of Reebok Future. He almost was kind of throwing shade a little bit at the other brands because saying, let me not put intent on him, but he was saying that we're not using plastic. He was like, because you're still, at the end of the day, it's still plastic. He's like, no matter how much you're recycling it, that plastic still has to go somewhere. He's like, we're using products that are natural and from the earth, and we're not creating something synthetic out of it. So he threw that little thing out there, and I was like, somebody's been to the shade room today. Throwing out a little bit. Not mad at you.
I think you could pick a little bit of that apart. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting comment. I mean, Reebok's not talking about being 100% recycled by 2024 like Adidas, right? Because they're owned by the same mother company, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about them saying that, though, publicly at least. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's just a really cool step in the right direction, right? Like, just the fact that companies are trying this stuff, like, you know, it's, for me, it's like just, it's so important to support these kind of things because it can't possibly hurt to do these kind of things compared to the way we've gone down this path already. You know, we've already kind of like created standards that for production and manufacturing that don't necessarily think about the environment as much as they probably should. So any kind of step back towards the right direction to me is something I want to kind of get behind. So
yeah, so just for the last looks on this one here, the sustainable sneaker features a woven upper made entirely from organic cotton, a base originating from industrial grown corn, and an insole made using castor bean oil. No dyes have been used to color the shoes either, and the packaging is 100% recyclable. And then finally it says, with product development, we're using materials that grow and can be replenished rather than petroleum-based materials commonly used today. Finally, we care about what happens to the shoes when people are done with them, so we focused on plant-based materials such as corn and cotton at the beginning and compostability at the end. So Bill McInnes is out here showing y'all he's a plant-based poppy when it comes to the sneakers that he creates. And I'm not mad at you, McInnes. Get your plant-based poppy on. All right. With that being said, let's move on to the next topic, which is buying sneakers. Buying sneakers has become increasingly difficult. Even if you are a sneakerhead, getting the right shoe is difficult, let alone if you're an average consumer who doesn't know the tricks of the trades, the bots, the groups, and sneakers, and all of that stuff. We got a request, or I should say a question from over on Instagram. Someone asking about finding out real sites for sneakers. And this is something that's becoming increasingly difficult because I feel like on social media, they're allowing these companies to advertise that and I guess that aren't real. They're fake. Basically, they're advertising knockoff products. And as a consumer, you don't necessarily know that. You just know that Yeezys are hot, or you know that Off-White shoes are hot, or Nikes are hot, or Vapor Max are cool. So you don't necessarily know that when you find a site that's offering them for 50% off, that it's a knockoff. So I guess, Nick, I'll toss this to you to start, but what are the, do you have a couple of signs or a couple of things that consumers should probably look for when they run up against something like this? Because even, quick story, even my aunt, who wanted to buy my nephew some Supreme stuff, she ended up buying some knockoff stuff on the web just because she didn't know any better. So are there a couple of things you can put out there that you think people should look for?
I mean, it's getting really, really tough, to be honest. There's so many fake sites that pop up and disappear so quickly. Chris that sent this into the Instagram account basically said that he questioned the legitimacy of the shoes and they blocked him on the, on their Instagram account. And I think that, for anybody that's not into sneakers, talking to somebody that's into sneakers when you're looking at buying the cool shoes that are coming out, right? The hype shoes are the ones that get copied the quickest and the most frequently and the most, kind of the most chaotic ways too. Multiple colors of Off-White shoes are all over the internet. But I think, in the end, this probably comes down to a bigger change that needs to happen. Both, I see it as two options, right? The brands have to really be very aggressive about going after these kind of companies, which is just a tireless, endless circle of chasing, ghosts on Instagram, basically. Or they could go partner with, let's say Facebook and the advertising. They're already working with the advertising department at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of these accounts because they're paying for ads constantly. You see them, right? But if they could somehow work with those teams at those, social media outlets, then maybe perhaps those businesses could actually create, a better way of policing these kind of things. Because it's not, even if you, in theory, the best way to do it would be hey, let's say there's a way to verify that you're, a knowledgeable sneaker person. And then that way, when you flag an account, it kind of goes into a different bucket than everybody else who's just randomly complaining about a bad comment.
Yeah.
But even then, that becomes really, really challenging because there's just so many of these accounts that pop up, and not everybody's going to know every account. So, without having a really big team of people trying to police this kind of thing, I don't see it really ever, coming to an end anytime soon. But hopefully, the more of this that gets elevated to the brands and to the advertising platforms like Facebook and Instagram, then those two sides can kind of come together and approach it in a new way, right? It's kind of who knows, maybe it becomes something a little bit different. Maybe it becomes something we had eBay for all these years, and then we had this influx of fake shoes on eBay where, regular people were getting scammed all the time. So the sneaker community kind of moved a lot of that stuff off of eBay and onto other platforms like StockX and GOAT and into Stadium Goods and Flight Club and those other places. Now I think this is kind of the next change in approaching just the policing of counterfeits across all kind of platforms of sneakers. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the days of the small niche community of sneakers is gone. It's a more mature entire society of people right now. Everybody in the world more or less wears some sort of shoe. So I honestly think that the community should police themselves. Nobody knows better than sneakerheads on what's real and what's different. Why isn't there just a website where you report and the people that don't know shoes, they can go to that website and see if is this a legitimate selling site or not? Like a TripAdvisor for sneakers. I think we've talked about this before. But this community is so good at identifying it, and the community in general feels pretty strongly about fakes and knockoffs and being ripped off. So Facebook and Instagram aren't going to do crap about it. I mean, they have too many products to make sure there's fakes. All the fake phones out there, all the fake person, like there's so much fake product. They can't monitor it. But this sneaker community is very, very powerful. They're very large too. So, I mean, publicizing one website to say, hey, make sure your shoes aren't fake at whatever it's called.com. That's way easier to get the word out and have everybody feed into it than it is policing all these. And the brands, they do the best they can. And I know they're actively working on it, but they can't find them all, before, thousands of people are ripped off. So I think the sneaker community should come together more often and do things. It's a very powerful community.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Jack.
I was gonna say, and this is where I take issue with the social media sites acting like they have no power over what goes on their sites. Like I firmly disagree with that. If like there's this fake stuff happening on your site, you need to respond to that pretty quickly and take care of that. You can respond to everything else, and you can do you can do all these things, but for some reason you can't get fraudulent people advertising on your site. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. I feel like there's too much power and too much control they have over their sites, and too many things that they can do for them to just turn a blind eye to something like this, that you're getting money from this. And before you take that money for those ads, or after you take those money for those ads, somebody's approving that stuff. And somebody needs to be able to look at that and go, oh no, this is not legit. So no, like approve those links, like look at those links. Like there has to be ways that you can work and find out if this stuff is legit. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't think the onus should be on the community. The onus should be on the social media sites. If you're going to make this money, if you're going to make this money from us being there, collecting our data, using all of that to improve your analytics and sending that to advertisers, then you should also protect that same community. If you're going to make money off of that community, you should also be doing something to protect them. I'll leave it at that.
It's tricky though, right? Because half of the people in the sneaker world that know shoes really well can't tell the fakes from the reals. So how is Facebook supposed to be able to do it? I don't disagree with you that, Facebook, Instagram, all those guys should be figuring out something. And they're probably the best people to do it, but they need our help. They can't do it without
most definitely
involved.
I agree, and I think Facebook even has like an internal sneakerhead group. I don't know if that's like a public thing, but like I just spilled the beans, I guess.
It is now.
But like it's a group of people that are really passionate about sneakers, and I think that group, the challenge in putting it on them is like they might not necessarily be in those positions at Facebook or Instagram to be the gatekeeper of those ads. And in theory, I think like the solution is almost like a hybrid of both of your positions on this, right? Like I think a site, if you look at like the old days of like forums or even Twitter, right? Like there's a lot of like, kind of legit check on myself type things where people will put their name out there to say like, hey, who's done business with me? This shows that I'm legit. And that adds some like, for within the community, that adds a lot of clout for them to be able to sell or trade or whatever. And on the other side, like the business itself could benefit from having like a team of people within the community that can at least let's say 80-20 rule, right? Like I bet you like the average sneakerhead could identify 80% of the fake ads right off the bat because they're just blaringly obvious to them. There are going to be those ones that are tougher and the ads that look better and it's harder to tell, but ideally it's some sort of mix between those two kind of approaches. But I think both of them also, like, if you had just like the ability to say start doing it and run with it, like either of those could make a huge impact on the counterfeit business.
All right.
I think we just had our first fight, Jacques.
No. No. It's all right. It was a healthy disagreement. With that being said, let's moving on to something about an argument about being right. And the question is Swaggy P right? And I'm gonna go out on a ledge here and say Swaggy P is always right. shot selection, everything. He's always right. But the question is Swaggy P right about Jordan? And he says, how many times can they remake the same J's? It's not that hard to come up with new shoes. Now, I can hear Tiffany's brain exploding over there. But I'm gonna go out on a ledge here and say you're right, Swaggy P. Talk that talk. Go ahead, Tiffany. I know you're waiting.
No, I don't disagree in that. How many times are they going to relaunch the same Jordans? I mean, they'll stop relaunching them when you stop buying them. So stop buying them.
True.
If you really want to see something new, stop buying them. You know, it is. It's not that hard to come up with new shoes. Now that's a whole different ballgame right there. But I agree. They're launching the same Jordans over and over. You know, just too many times. Do you want me to dive into the other one?
Yes, that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for the salt. I know it's good. I know it's there.
I mean, if you look at the last 5 years of Jordans, how have the sales been, right? They're not old enough to retro yet. And so if it's not that hard to come up with new shoes, why are they not blowing out? Why are Steph Curry's shoes not blowing out? I mean, these are new designs. They're different. Like, it is hard to come up with a new shoe in performance basketball that does have technical attributes and also style. We just talked about that earlier in this podcast. Like, that is a hard combination. That's why all the entertainers are doing so successful right now. So I would disagree. To find the right mix of performance and style is very challenging, especially when you start looking at the IP of shoes. There are so many design patents on aesthetics of shoes. And you have to work through those. You got to work around those. So I think it is more tricky than you think.
Yeah. So I'm gonna acknowledge that Swaggy P is always right, but there's like an asterisk next to his everything he says, just in case, or any shot selection that he might take. But I will say that, there's two things I think that makes me think about. One, he's wearing a shoe that, he plays in Adidas, in like a lot of retro model shoes, right? Which is just ironic. Even like the Yeezy 500, the tooling from the shoe comes from previous model of Adidas that is, 20 plus years old. So in a sense, he's kind of being hypocritical. The other part of it is Jordans can't exist in the way that Jordans should exist in the way that a Chuck Taylor, a Stan Smith, some of these shoes that are almost always readily available, right? Or seasonally available. And I think that is kind of where we're getting to with Jordan. And the more the production is way over the top on these retro models, the more they're going to have to pull back, make more unique colorways. And eventually I think you'll see that a good percentage of the Jordan retro models that come out will be original colorways, and you'll see them fairly regularly. And I think that there's enough market if they were to slow down production, because obviously they've been making a lot of shoes lately, because even with a lot of the threes that came out earlier this year, those shoes were still available and restocked and restocked and restocked. And that kind of kills the rest of the colorways, because people really love those black cement threes. People will own 3, 4, 5 pairs of that shoe, if not more, over, let's say, a Jordan 12 original colorway retroed, or something like that.
Yeah.
So eventually they're going to have to kind of look towards those legacy products, and they're going to have to pick and choose a handful that become legacy, and then use the others to kind of hype up things and create a lot of buzz, at least in my opinion.
So question for both of you, actually. What Jordan model do you think should be available like a Chuck Taylor?
The 3. The 1 and the 3.
Yeah, I think, if I was running Jordan Brand, I would say that there's probably at least one colorway of, the 1, 3, 4, and 11 that are always going to be available on an annual basis. and maybe you switch that out every year. Maybe one year is the white version, or summer is the white version, fall is the black version of a shoe, and then the rest of the colorways just kind of like play with it the same way they do, right? Sometimes it's super limited, sometimes it's because at this point they're getting to the point where it's so saturated that like even like a really good looking shoe, it's like, well, I just bought 5 different colorways because I didn't know if they were going to come out again, so I don't want to spend money on those other shoes. But I think like the Jordan 3 for sure, the Jordan 1 for sure, which they've obviously made, the Jordan 1 has been in production, I think probably since 94. I don't know, like somebody would have to check me on that, but I'm pretty sure like once they retroed it the first time, a version of the Jordan 1 came out consistently ever since, at some point in each calendar year.
It's like the Air Force One, right? Like the Air Force One,
right.
They change materials and colors, but it's a standard, right? You can basically always find it. A few of those should just match that model.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. I'm going to say only the Jordan 1, and I think everything else should be as is. The red and black colorway of the Jordan 1, like a gray and a black version, and should always be available. Kind of like a Chuck Taylor. You can just go in the store and get them anytime you want. But I'm going to hold the 3. I'm going to hold it close. It's going to be my precious. I'm not going to... I'm willing to walk to Mordor for the 3. I will not allow you to make it available to everyone. But anyway, with that being said, that's interesting. It's interesting though. I get what Swaggy's saying, but and as much as it pains me to say, it is hard to come up with new shoes. I see new shoes all the time, and some of them are terrible. But I won't name any names. Anyway, with that being said, thank you guys for listening to the Outside the Box podcast. I am Jacques Slade. You can find me at Cousteau all over the internets. That's KUSTOO. You can find us at Outside Pods for the entire show if you want to leave us feedback or talk back to us. But again, this show isn't about me. This is a 3-person effort. If this family was a rich family, again, I am the spoiled kid. I'm the bad kid that spends all the hard-earned money that the family created with some sort of IP, creating some sort of special deal, and I took over the company and ran it into the ground because I partied all night and spent it on cocaine. But for the other 2 people on this podcast, they have some depth to them. They're bigger and better than what I do. So Nick, tell them where they can find you.
So in that analogy, I'd like to just say that I'd probably be the one encouraging all of Jacques' bad decisions. But I think that's how it works best. But you can find me at Nick Engvall, NickEngvall, all over the internet, or at Sneaker History, sneakerhistory.com. But really, I think the most important person in this family is definitely Tiffany. So Tiffany, let them know how they can find you.
I built the company, and I'm super pissed that you guys are pissing it away. Tiffany Beers, TiffanyBeers, and you can find me on Instagram and YouTube.
Again, you can find us at Outside Pods. Leave us feedback. Leave us feedback on SoundCloud, or whether that's on iTunes. Leave us a review, or if you're catching this on YouTube, leave comments down below. We appreciate all of it so much. Thank you guys for listening. You guys are the best, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Peace.